Yeah.
Hey, BJ.
How's it going?
That's fine. Dave, thank you for sending the link because, of course, I was searching for it.
You betcha, no problem. BJ, the YouTube feed is live, so when you are ready, you're good to go. Just advance heads up. Looking at the list, we have 4 folks signed up for public comment in this order: Art, Nan, Ken, and Brian. Just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay. Is Nan the one that's logged in as Gail? Okay. Just trying to
I don't see
navigate
Nan
some.
yet.
Okay. It is 6 o'clock, so I am going to officially start this meeting. And I'm going to officially mention that I have 2 screens, so if I look sideways a lot, it's because I am looking at everybody else and other papers and things like that. So I apologize for that. So let's go to the approval of the agenda. Are there any items in the agenda that need changing? Or approval agenda? I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. This is Adrian.
Second?
Lenny will. Second.
Any changes? Okay, can I have a vote for approval? Thumbs up. 1, 2. 1, 2. So we have 3 official members. Is that good, David? That are here, that are on the policy committee? You're muted. Always fun to say that.
Sorry about that. Usually I have to say that to other people. You have a committee of 5, and so 3 is your quorum for voting purposes.
Okay. So that is approved. Okay, public input and announcements. We do have some public. I would like to remind the public what I will be doing is I'll be giving everybody 2 minutes. I will definitely remind you guys at 30 seconds. I got to remember to set my phone. This is the policy committee, so please keep it about the policy. This is not any support or any particular flags. If we were going to be talking about that, you only have 1 opportunity to speak. Let's see where else I'm missing. If you can, try not to repeat somebody else. And actually, I also want to say just thank you. I'm happy to actually have public comment. With that in mind, I will get my phone ready. David, if you want to let the first person know that was on the list, you want to help me out with that?
Yeah, so once again, in order, just for folks, we've got Art Peterson up first, followed by Nan Dubin. I don't know if Nan is actually on the meeting right now. After Nan is Ken Fredette, and then after Ken is Brian McFerrin, just so everybody knows the order.
Okay. That said, Art.
Yes. Can you hear
Go
me?
right ahead.
Okay. Yeah. At the last board meeting, in the superintendent's report, it was stated that enrollment was down 9% across the district. And it was also stated that some of that had to do with the flags. That fact alone should give this board and this policy committee pause. Your enrollment is down because of the flag issue. You are losing kids. You are losing families who are willing to spend money to send their kids somewhere else. You've upset families and are losing the family structure. You are making parents make moral decisions about where to send their children to school. If that's not wrong, I don't know what is. Okay. Any policy that you come up with in this committee should ban flags that have anything to do with a political nature or are in any way divisive. And that's all I've got to say.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
Who was next on the list, David?
Next is Nan Dubin, but I do not see Nan, so that would bring us to. Oh,
I just sent Nan a link, so she's trying to get on, and
Okay.
you might just put her further down on the list.
sure, we can do that. So then we'd have Ken Fredette followed by Brian McFerrin.
Hey, Ken.
Okay,
So-
good evening. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. I'll start the timer when you start your conversation.
All right, well, thanks for the opportunity. I don't have a lot to say. I've just been thinking about running for the school board, and I wanted to see what it was all about. Now, actually, I did send members of this committee an email this morning about a piece on Vermont Digger about the Southern Poverty Law Center featuring Randolph High School in a podcast. And there was a quote in there from the producer of that podcast from Southern Poverty Law Center that made me think of y'all, well, the entire Mill River Board. It was just talking about not shying away, school boards not shying away from dealing with very difficult conversations, which is what this committee is doing, and the board will follow, and what Randolph has been doing. They've been dealing with flying flags over there. So I just wanted to add my voice. I've added it before to applaud your efforts once again, and I'm glad you stay focused on students. Don't get distracted. Keep focused on what's best for kids. And I want you to know there are a lot of people out there that feel the same way about this. So thanks again, and stay well, everybody. That's all I've got tonight. Thanks.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay. I think Nan, I think you're next on the list. The way it's going to work is you have 2 minutes to speak. I'll give you a 30-second warning when you're ready. This is a policy committee, so it's specifically about the policy and not any particular flag. Let me reset my phone, and when you're ready. Oh, hold on. Are you muted? You might be muted. Let's get you on technical stuff under control first. If you move your mouse around down in the bottom, you'll see a little microphone that should help you unmute.
Thank
There you go. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I want to basically reinforce what Ken just said when he said that there are a lot of people who agree that a policy regarding flying flags is a good idea for our school. Therefore, it would lead to being able to make decisions about which flags to fly at our school and focusing on what's best for students. And I think the two flags that have been under consideration make sense at a school that has Black students, gay students, trans students. And so I hope that, when this policy is done, it'll make it easier for you to, assess each flag on its own merits and make decisions that will work best for our students. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you. That's okay. And we have, I think, one more person that has signed up.
That's correct. That's Brian McFerrin is next.
So Brian, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not
Thank
bad.
you for my request, but unfortunately, I've decided that I'm going to reserve my comments for during following up meetings. So, but thank you for the time.
No problem. Okay. Anne was very kind to post the link to the YouTube that you can watch this live. I encourage you to do so. And I actually encourage the rest of the public to continue with that one. And then we will follow through with the rest of the meeting. Okay. So looking at the agenda, we have approval of minutes. Does anybody, we'll do one at a time. So from 2/4/20, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from 2/4/20?
So moved, Adrian.
Lenny will second.
2/4/20. Any changes that we should be making that people notice in discussion? Okay, can I have a vote to approve the minutes for 2/4/20? Approved. Okay, 3/10. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion. This is Adrian.
And Lenny?
I'm seconding. This is going to get repetitive.
You can switch off.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, can I have a vote? Okay, approved. And 9/1.
So moved. Go ahead, Len.
Seconded.
Discussion? A vote? Thumbs up, approved. Okay. That's all done. Now we have the flag committee. I definitely want to start with the committee members. And then I'll take comment from, actually, I'll just go down the list here.
PJ, where are we starting from?
We are now, if anybody, we can actually, David, at this time, do you want to share the policy so that, and if you have a link to the policy, if you guys want to open it up and just spend a few minutes just looking through it, we'll kind of go down through and read and comment on it. From that point in time, I should do the same.
You bet, BJ. Give me a moment. I'll reshare with folks.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask while we're waiting, is that the draft flag procedures? Is that the same?
I have draft. Yes. Okay, go on.
Yeah, Len, it's the one we looked at last week. Draft flag request policy, criteria, and procedures. It's got a date of 9/15/2020 on it. And then BJ, once I know you're going to talk to the group about what they're interested in making sure is a part of a policy, but once you get to actually looking at this draft, if you'd like me to share my screen so that the public can see what you're actually looking at, I'd be happy to do so.
Do you want to do that just for a little bit for right now, and then we'll take it off? Or do we want to wait?
Just my suggestion. I would let your board members comment on what their interests are, and then throw it up when you start discussing the actual potential language.
Okay.
If you're waiting for comment, I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah. I'm reading some suggestions by David for how to go through on this one, but
It's okay.
Okay. So even before comment or before we go in here, is there anything you guys would like to see in particular? And David, if you want to keep notes on this that we can add to the notes, I seem to be. Is there anything in particular? And I'm going to go right down, and I have a list of everybody. So Len, you're up first. I'm just going to go in the order that
Thanks.
Google gave it to me. Just in a policy in general.
Yeah. And give me a minute here. I'm gonna, well, because I know this is kind of going against the grain, but that's okay. I believe it would be impossible to come up with any flag policy that would not be viewed as discriminatory. And each decision made by the board to fly or not fly a flag sets us up for the same kind of situation we are in now. So I would like to make a motion that we implement a policy that states no flags other than the United States and state flag be flown at any time at any district school buildings. I believe we can provide other venues inside the building that would allow even more student expression and freedom of speech. But my motion is that no other flags other than the United States and the state flag be flown.
Okay. Because it was a motion, do I have to go through the process? Okay. Len made a motion to. Len made a motion. Does anybody second that motion? Help me out with what do we do if there's no second?
If there's no second, the motion is done at that point, and you proceed.
Okay. So with that, I'm gonna see, not noting any second, I'm gonna move anything else. Any further comment, Len?
Nope. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Maria, you're actually next on the list. Anything you'd like to see in a policy, not about the one that was the draft one.
Oh, I have some specific questions about this policy. Is this the time for this?
I'll actually circle back around when it comes directly to the policy, but I'm just trying to keep it open, general comments about a flag policy right now.
Oh, about a flag policy. I think that in contrast to what Len just said, I think the point of us working on a policy is so we won't have this kind of conflict in the future. It'll be really clear how we will accept a flag, how we'll accept what kind of proposal we'll accept, how we'll consider that proposal, and how we'll make a decision on it. And if we write a solid policy, then, which is what our job is, then we should not have this kind of amount of conflict with this.
Okay. John, do you have anything general that you would like to see in a policy, flag policy?
Well, one of the big things that I think needs to be on there is, some of the key points that I would like to see in a policy are in the draft.
Okay.
One thing that isn't is, I think we need to have some language around symbols, slogans, or language that is recognized by national organizations such as the Anti-Defamation League and Southern Poverty Law Center as hate speech, hate symbols, things like that. I think that's going to be very important because this is potentially going to be something very prominent at the school.
Okay. Doug, anything in particular? You're on mute, so don't forget to unmute.
Nothing really particular. I'm sort of on the same wavelength as Len is. I think we need to do more inside the building. And my preference would not be for the BLM flag. I think it's got too much baggage with it, especially over the last couple of years. I can see why the committee was looking for it before, because it wasn't to that point what they're doing now. There's other ways of standing up and helping students of color. And I come from a situation where I had 5 of my kids go through the school with color, and all 5 of them had one issue or another at one time or another, including one that couldn't generate enough to even finish school. He ended up getting a GED that way. I'm just interested to see what we're going to do, and I'll give some more information somewhere down the road.
Okay. Adrian, you're up.
Okay. I guess I'm looking at a policy or hoping that we can develop a policy that is, I guess, sort of diametrically opposed to what we have in front of us. And that is to say what we can fly. And not to try and identify every possible thing that we can't fly. I think if we put language in a policy that is directly tied to our, either one of our existing policies that we already have on the books, or a direction that the board has been openly following, you know, from board goals to our 3-year plans, or something that gives evidence that that is why that flag is being flown. I totally agree with the idea that we can develop a policy that is able to be defensible and leaves no doubt or little doubt as to why a particular flag was picked and why another flag might be turned down. I find it very hard to believe that we have to identify every negative thing. I mean, we've got lots of different policies that say you can't wear t-shirts that have drugs and alcohol on them. You can't wear a belt buckle that has the Confederate flag. We could perhaps expand those to say that they, and I think actually they already say that they will not be found on school grounds. I would like to write a positive policy that says we are flying flags because they support our policies and our aspirations and our plans, and be done with it.
Okay. I'm going to add my own commentary, and I actually love your idea, Adrian. You know, flags that directly support our student body, I think, is something that I would very much be behind. I'm also kind of in the same boat as Len and Doug, where I would love to visually represent any type of flags that represent our student body. I don't necessarily think the flagpole that houses the American flag and the Vermont flag is the right place. I personally would like to see just some of those diagonal flags on all the pillars at Mill River type of a thing, and those representative of showing representativeness to our student body is my kind of thing that I would like to see in the policy. And I think I don't know if we need to specify flags, or do we need to go into symbols when we go to banners, you know, symbolic things, representation. That's another question whether the flag versus a symbol.
Can I say something? Are we going to be discussing the flag policy, or are we going to talk about not flying it, flying something? I mean,
no, I think the next thing I want to do, now that David and the policy committee have actually heard some generic input, is I want to look at the draft policy that David has put together. I think we should review it as a possible one, and then actually, I don't know how to proceed here. So David, I guess we should read through this policy, see what we really want to change, what we would not want to change. I definitely want to take another meeting to visually see what David comes up with based on feedback of what we give to this policy right now and what we just gave David as what we'd want to see in a policy.
are we writing it, or is David writing it?
From my understanding, this policy was written in coordination with Pietro, our lawyer. David, actually, you want to jump in? Do you want to answer to that?
I'd be happy to. What you're looking at is a draft policy that was crafted by our attorney and is perceived to be appropriate and legal as a way to approach this issue. It's now in the board's hands to decide, is this something you even want to consider Do you like anything that's here, or do you think this is worthless and want to start from scratch? I suspect whatever the direction you choose is, at the end of this meeting, you'll probably give me a new sense of direction to say, now go work on this. And I could envision that being either take this that you have in front of you and tweak it based on what we talked about, or go back to the drawing board with our attorney to make sure that we're covering the speech issues that need to be addressed. Does that help?
Okay. I'm going to look at Adrian and Len, just as since you're the official ones on the committee. Do either of you have a way that you want to proceed with this policy?
I would love to continue discussing this policy. I mean, I think
Okay.
the preamble, the reason to have a flag policy is good. As I said before, I would like to change the criteria to being less of a negative and more of a positive. And to see if that works better for us, maybe keeping some of those criteria in place, certainly the subject to copyright licensing, that kind of thing, primarily a commercial nature. I would also like to bring back the where the flag ideas come from. And I am in support of having students and perhaps staff suggesting flags to the school board rather than have them come from the school board specifically. Administrators are welcome to do that. I think if we're only flying flags that are in support of our own policies and our own direction, then it shouldn't come from the board specifically. It's sort of like when we set policy and we expect other people to follow through on it. I would like to see people following through, suggesting things that they'd like to see, bringing the administrators in to determine whether or not they fit our plans for the school, and then voting on it. I think this is a perfectly reasonable start. I don't know whether the procedures themselves are specifically what I want to see, but I thought we were writing the policy first and procedures would come later. I'm done.
And I agree for the most part with what Adrian is saying. I think, you know, one of my questions, because when we were originally talking about the flag, we were originally talking about all schools in the district. And I think it was in the original procedures, I don't know if it still is or not, because I'm kind of going back and forth, that elementary schools would not be considered. Is that still true in the new one?
I believe it is, but I wouldn't mind putting something, well, never mind. I'm content with that. I think that's a reasonable thing. High school kids are perfectly capable of having these kind of conversations.
Okay. Now that I got you guys' input, what I want to do is, do we want to, as a group here, because I'd like to get feedback from everybody, do we want to go line by line? Do we want to look at this first paragraph, actually? Let's start with that. Do we want to look at this first paragraph?
Yes, please.
And start there. And I'm just going to pick some people and just go down the list. So we'll kind of do that. John, you got anything?
No, the first paragraph I think is fine. I think it spells out what the concept is behind the, flying a flag and what we're trying to accomplish. I don't have any issues with that part.
Okay. Maria, do you have anything?
Hi. I do, because we keep talking about wanting the proposals to come from students or people from the school community, like within the school building community. So that the whole part about government speech, I'm not quite sure why that is so specific there. So does that then become speech of the school board? Is that what we're implying by government here? That's what I'm confused about, because if it's a form of government speech, it's separate from private speech by students and community members, but it comes, I mean, ideally it does come from students.
Yeah. David,
So-
could you clear us up about what do you mean by government speech? And
Yeah,
probably,
you folks are the government, and you own the flagpole. So any statement you make on the flagpole is the government making a statement. That's the simplest answer.
Hence the policy. Hence we get to make, we have the responsibility to make the policy to decide what's going to go onto the polls.
okay. I saw John's hand up. Do you have something? And then I'll go call on Adrian.
Yeah, just really quickly, I think what the distinction is the private speech is being forwarded by students or staff or whatever, but as soon as we as the government approve it and put it on a flagpole, then it becomes our speech and we are the government. So that was, I think, that's how I read that.
Yeah. Adrian?
I think I would go even a step further, John, and say that because we took their suggestion and that we are flying it, it is entirely our speech. And that was the reason when I suggested that we have the suggestions come from the students or staff, because I can see staff members saying, hey, we're working on this whole, multi-year program to curriculum to widen our children's knowledge of the world. Maybe they want to fly a flag for that reason, to encompass, some other culture that they're focusing on, whatever, that they should be allowed to, and encouraged to do that. And we should be the ones who are deciding, yes, that is speech that we approve of. I think when we start putting the flags up without any tie-in to the curriculum and to the efforts made at the school with under policy that we write and under curriculum that I guess we approve of sort of secondhand just by paying for it, that we are taking that next step. We are the ones who are deciding that that is something that's appropriate for a government flagpole. If we are only saying these are the criteria for kids to fly flags, then it's public speech, and then we fly everything. We
Right.
have to take ownership of whatever message is there. It is our message, and it has to be able to be tied into some kind of effort that we are making in either in a curriculum or a social curriculum way. And that's the only way that I would support this, I think.
Okay.
That makes sense. And I just did a quick cram on what government speech was on another window. And it all makes a lot more sense too. And also the part that I've just learned that the government advancing its own speech without requiring viewpoint neutrality when the government itself is the speaker. So we're making choices according to what's relevant and important to support our students and our school community.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to own this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great.
Doug or Len, anything you guys want to add? Okay. My only personal thought is, as I stated before, I have in my mind, a very big distinction between flying flags and representing things and the flag pole that houses the American flag and Vermont flag. And when I read this as we're only talking about that one flagpole, the one that houses houses those two flags. And this first paragraph is what really makes me think that. Do we want to be that restrictive to just that pole, or do we want to just be representative? Because this, to me, this first paragraph makes it so it doesn't even cover if we want to put it on the side of the building type of a thing.
We don't have to do that. I mean, we're designating this because this became an issue. Nobody said anything about the side of the building becoming an issue. That may be a further message. I see this as something where we are saying these things are so important. This topic, this effort that we're making, and that we are flying a flag in, not in honor of it, but in, in representation of the efforts that we are making, that we are owning and that we are supporting. That's why it has that place.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I think the flag pole in front of the school is a unique thing, and it holds a special place in most people's minds. And by designating a flag to fly there along with the United States flag and the Vermont state flag, I think that's making a statement of the importance that we're giving this particular topic, or this particular group, or this particular whatever it is that is going up on the pole.
Okay, so
I
this
don't,
is
however,
specifically- yeah.
well, but I don't disagree with you that I think the banner, I don't know if we have another policy that might specifically talk about banners on the outside of the school, or one of the other things elsewhere in the policy is on the athletic field or things like that. And perhaps there does need to be something in relation to that, but that may or may not fit in this policy. You know what I mean? This is
Okay.
just talking about the flagpole in front of the school. We could have a whole different policy for other areas of the school, or we could try and incorporate it in with this. I think you
it'd
could
be
really
better
go either
not
way.
to dilute it.
Well, I
I
think,
mean,
that would be my preference, would be to stick with flagpole being one thing, and then we can work on a different policy for other forms of expression at other parts of the
Yeah.
building, particularly public facing ones.
Yeah, because you might want to give particular clubs space to put their ideas, or or something like that, and that's very different than what this policy is saying.
Okay, so and I'm okay with that. Len, you sound good. This is really
Yeah, I
specifically
think
about
it
that
is.
policy.
I think it is critical that we look at other venues for folks to express, to feel that they're free to express their beliefs, their freedoms. Because obviously, to me anyways, what's going to go up on the pole out in front of the school is going to be very limited.
Okay, sounds good to me.
I mean, as a point of fact, BJ,
Yeah.
the criteria that we have here, which is very limiting and saying all the things that we can't do, I think that's more appropriate for what you're talking about, where we're allowing public speech perhaps on the walls of the school somewhere. And those things would be appropriate to limit that to things that we find acceptable.
Okay.
And then we have a different set of criteria, a different outlook perhaps on the flag policy. But that's
Okay, so that's I think a really good transition from that first paragraph to talking about that criteria. Any further comment? And Jody and David, if you guys have any input, feel free to raise your hand and let me know.
BJ, don't get administrators started talking. We'll never be quiet. But quick question.
Okay, well, I'll give you the 2-minute warning.
Nice. How's the text size for what you can see on your screen? I can't tell what you can see. Do you want to see more text, or is this appropriate the way it is?
it's fun.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to keep in mind with what Adrian has said, and I think the criteria is important. I think there may be more discussion about whether this particular criteria belongs in this particular policy or not, but I think we should give it its merit and go through it line by line. Sound like a good plan? Okay. Okay. Line 1. If you guys have any comment, please raise your hand. I'll try and organize that.
I like 1. Maybe not to the 2 and 3, but yeah.
I think 1 and 2 both kind of have to be there for the legalese part of this.
Yeah, maybe 3 is where I come in with the The positive instead of the we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do that.
Raised. Okay. Any further comment? 1, 2. I'll jump into 3. So, David, you definitely got some feedback about positive as opposed to negative. I see Doug trying to get in there. So, Doug, love to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm trying to, only I've done through a lot of policies over the years. 3C stops as at tobacco, alcohol, or illegal drug. And we need to add something to the end of that in case something else comes along, so we don't have to change it. Or there's something like or others possibly at the end of that state as that paragraph. So it would read, constitute a direct or substantial danger to the health or welfare of students, such as tobacco, alcohol, illegal drugs, or other.
Could I make a suggestion where we just say all request? I have language. All requests must clearly further a stated board educational effort or goal, or is supported in current approved policy. And none of those things, if they qualifies for that, none of this stuff is going to be there.
I see some nods.
I mean,
Now,
it just won't be.
Is that in all replacing basically A through H? You thinking?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we need to add something about the educational value, possibly also supporting the vision, mission vision, you know, those students feel welcome, students feel appreciated, you know, that I think we need to have language in there about supporting that. I don't object to turning this around to being, as Adrian says, the positives of this. I think that's a great idea. You know, it must, any flag that will be flown must support, and then we can go with the rest of the language. But the copywriting thing may have to be included again as a legalese thing. I would guess, but I don't know.
I think, you know, we're going to either approve it or not approve it. We could have these in the back of our mind and say, in fact, we could have it as part of, you know, some kind of things to be review, to use as review, you know, say that the criteria that we're giving to the outside is, hey, it needs to be in support of, and then I like all your stuff, John, with all the different, you know, either our goals or our mission statement or, you know, something. And then in terms of board procedure, we could use these because obviously none of these things are things that we would want to see on the flagpole. I mean,
Adrian, for the purpose of the notes that I'm taking, could you just go through your statement once more? I got about a third of it. I did my best.
Okay. I was just wondering if we could take out the whole of 3 and put in some, you know, a combination of what John and I had said, making it sound more prosy and more complete, that we will fly flags that are in support of our educational endeavors, our board goals, our board policy, you know, curriculum development, all of those things could be reasons why students or administrators would want to fly a flag. And all of those reasons are reasons why we would say yes. And then when we're reviewing the actual flag, we could have maybe down at the end, maybe make 3 number 4 and say the board shall use the following to review a suggested flag.
Got it. I got the concept.
You know, something like that.
Yeah. The copyright thing makes me think of
nobody's going to fly Mickey Mouse.
Well, what I'm thinking, the copyright might come into play, not necessarily flying a flag that is pre-representative. You know, any other country flags, if we have students from other countries or something like that. Even the LGBTQ flag. What comes into mind with there is maybe like a student designed flag, one that they're trying to represent something new, that they're trying to put together, maybe it's a club that's trying to start something. And then they start designing their flag, and then all of a sudden they're starting to use copyright things in there. That's where I'm wondering if that copyright really might come into play. And I'm even thinking of like when I was working for Fairhaven, the hand became an issue. It Len's laughing. David.
Yeah, BJ, I think the intent of that copyright line is about protecting the district from somebody saying, hey, that's my image, you're not allowed to use that. So theoretically, if you go online and you purchase a flag, by purchasing that flag, you're purchasing the right to display that flag. But if there was something that contained property that someone else owns that they don't want to be displayed, that maybe someone found online just with a clip art job, you know, something like that, that's where there's some importance there to protect the district.
Just a thought, BJ, if I could, that maybe if we're looking at making this a more positive step, maybe the copyright licensing or trademarks piece goes somewhere else rather than here. Just a thought.
Yeah, that was sort of what I was talking about, Len, that's, you know, like the board review stuff in the back of our mind. These are things that we need to keep aware of.
So that copyright almost goes to a procedure.
Yeah.
As opposed, so that copyright gets stopped by the administration, not by the policy.
Yeah, but all of number 3 pretty much could be procedure. Criteria could be the positive, procedure could be all of the no's. Isn't that the way of life, you know? Hey, go out and do it, but no, you can't do it that way.
I actually like that a lot. I think that sounds like a really good idea. A lot of the procedures that are on the next page are pretty significant too. So it could end up being a really long procedure list.
Well, that's okay if it has a set of criteria to keep us out of trouble.
And the procedures are not going to be part of the policy, even though they're part of this draft. Am I right, David?
We've tried to stay away from that.
Yeah.
Sorry, just getting to the mute button. That would be correct, BJ. We tend to keep procedures separate from the policy.
I'm just noting that for anybody who's watching, that these draft flag procedures will be a separate document and not a policy. And if you are listening, the procedures are, I don't know how we want to, David, you want to explain the difference between a procedure and a policy quickly for anybody who's watching?
Yeah, well, in really simple terms, procedures kind of govern the day-to-day, right? The policy is the law, and the procedures are how that law gets implemented. And procedures also have the capacity to change, you know, based on whatever circumstances may come up that would merit change, and they don't require the same level of board work and approval in order to officially change them. So they're more flexible, for lack of a better way of putting it.
Thank you.
So BJ, do we want to look at the procedures? Because I could see there's a lot of stuff there that we might want to talk about.
David, did you say anything there? I'm looking at our time. We have about 12 minutes left. I think some feedback on the procedures. Would you like some feedback from this group, David? Or before we move on to the flag procedures, what do you need from us to give us an update for our next meeting?
Yeah, for the sake of organizing work, what I'm hearing from the group is you like the opening kind of statement of policy, opening paragraph. When it comes to, and I'm just on my screen, sorry, this is going to change everyone else's screen as well. When it comes to the draft flag criteria, you'd like to shift those into the procedure realm and make more of a positive facing statement about what types of things can be approved. And you had a number of things that are kind of the criteria that would merit approval. And then you'd like me to figure out a way to take the criteria that's here and work that into the list of procedures that are here in a way that's logical and makes sense. I guess my request would be if anybody has any strong opinions on the side that they'd like me to think about as I try to reorganize that for you, please just send it my way. And to prep for our next policy committee meeting, I will reorganize all this and present it in a way that fits the nature of tonight's conversation. And then we see where that dialogue goes the next time. Is that okay?
I just have a question, if I might.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. Because the procedures speak a lot to what we as a board would be doing, you usually, in my mind anyways, which used to work a lot better, but in procedures are more what takes place in the school building on, as you said, David, on a day-to-day basis. We're looking at these procedures, and it's what the school board is going to do, and we meet twice a month. So I'm not sure. I guess my question is, should they be attached to the policy so that, because we're the ones that are going to be dealing with these procedures? I'm not sure how that would work.
That's a valid question, Len. If you don't mind, let me try to make some sense out of it and try to frame it in a way that aligns with keeping the policy in the policy range, but keeping the procedures so that they're usable, but figuring out where the line is between those two. Is that okay in terms of just trying to do the initial work?
Yeah, and that's fine with me. It just, I want to make sure that if we're the group that's going to be making these decisions, that we don't just say, for example, well, because this is what we think. The procedures will enable us to go back and say, you're not a student, and so therefore we can't consider it, because that's what it says. It would cause a copyright issue there. That's why we refuse to fly it. So I just think those kinds of things should be somewhere. And I understand it should. I'm not saying it should be part of the policy, because you want your policy as brief as possible. Here's the policy. It's pretty simple. But I think because of the issues that have been raised, I think it's important that this information be available as well.
Yeah.
I agree with that, Len. I think that's a good idea.
I want to give John a chance before you get going into your thing, David.
Yeah, I agree. This probably should be at least attached to it or available with it or whatever, because I think it's going to be important. This is going to be a place where people can go and say, okay, I want to raise a flag on the flagpole. What do I do? And we can say, well, here's the policy. Go look at it. And included is the criteria. We can put a disclaimer up there that this is not part of the policy. They can be changed by the board or administration at any time. But I think it's good to have it there for people to have one-stop shopping. And if we can just have a really quick conversation about a couple of little things that I see in the procedures, it might help David. I think he might need some input on a couple things that might be helpful, if you don't mind.
David,
Is
that
that
work
okay,
for you?
BJ?
I'll take whatever you.
I will go for it.
Absolutely.
Okay. The procedures we're pretty much agreed that it has to come from students. I think there's some language in there about a petition. Actually, a petition appears in a couple different places. The problem with the language as it stands is it's not specific enough. It just says you have to have a petition and signatures. It doesn't say how many. 1, 5, 100. There's nothing specific. Adrian, can you mute? I think we're picking up something on you. Thank you.
I think it was my dog having.
I think it was. It sounded very familiar. That's all right. So I think we need to add numbers to that. People can decide whether it's a number, a percentage, or what have you. But I think we need numbers there, or we need to say it needs to come from a student organization as opposed to an individual student. But I think we need to make it easy, but it has to show support of more than just one person. So I think if we say a student organization or X number of students or X percentage of the student population or something. I think we need to give it more concrete numbers to that. And having said that, given where we are right now with coronavirus, I think we need to have an exemption in there or an exception for situations where you may not be able to get people's actual physical signature for something. We don't want that to stifle the speech because they can't go out and actually see their friends and get signatures. You know, digital signatures are being used everywhere now for online petitions. You can digitally sign loans now. I think we can probably find a way to have some exception for circumstances like we're in now. And it may not, you know, coronavirus is just one thing. There may be something else that comes along too. I think those were really the biggest things, the biggest questions and issues that I had with what was in here. I have a few other little things, but those are the biggies for me.
So I'm thinking documented support is almost maybe a good term.
I think if
Adrian.
it comes,
Oh,
sorry. I think if it comes from a student organization, that implies that it's more than one student. It's a group of students. I mean, we could do that, or we could just set a number on it. Either way.
I wanted to ask whether or not we had discounted the idea of having flags coming from any other staff, or are we doing this entirely on a student basis? I'm okay either way. I'm just not sure whether we had determined that or not.
One thing I wouldn't mind seeing, and I don't know if the flagpole is the right place, but I know like when our kids go to a trip to Spain or one of those trips, which I still hope happening, I would love to see that country represented. And I don't know if that's from a student, would be a student request or a staff request.
So
oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, are you thinking of like for the week before they go or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I think that is.
Okay, I'm just curious.
And I don't know if the flagpole is the right place for that, but I guess that would be a situation that I could see happen.
I think we can find to Adrian's question, I think we can find a way to include staff as well. You know, staff could always work through students or student organization, but I think, you know, we could consider flags being requested from staff, you know, but here again, do we want to consider every request from just a single person, even if it is a staff member, a department, I don't know, from the administration? I don't know how we want to do it. That presents a little bit more of a challenge, I think. I think we can do it. It's just we have to give that some thought as to how we would do it.
I could think of, you know, in terms of the equity work that's being done by the administration, the kids aren't, although they're highly affected, they're not really involved in that work on a day-to-day basis. And they may not have that impetus to fly something that's in support of that. And the administration who's trying to get an idea across may have something that they'd like to put to that important level.
Yeah, I just a quick comment, because I know we're running late. If a staff member or a group of staff members wants to make a presentation or present a flag, couldn't they go to the building administrator first, so that rather than coming to the board? That's a typical procedure that we use, that if there's an issue of some kind, speaking more negatively, but it would go to the building principal first before it came to the board. So if they went to the building principal and said, we'd like this, or I would like this, and the building principal makes a decision, then at that point, depending on whether they like the decision or not, they could bring that then to the board. But they would have already had to been through an administrative process.
Which could look at trademark and whether or not it had some nasty stuff on it or whatever. And we could get out of that review process. Right,
that's
Dave?
Adrian. That's what I was going to ask the board if you're comfortable. You know, I'm looking at the stuff under number 3, the kind of the negative criteria that are there, right? And then if you go to, please bear with me. You know, number 2 in the procedure says submit a request to the superintendent to be added to a school board agenda. I think I'd like to reframe this so that request that comes to the superintendent, or we could even say superintendent or designee, that there would be a review of the criteria to make sure that the request even met the criteria. Because I don't want something coming to the board where you have to go, oh, is this a visual replication? Does this meet copyright law? I'd like to be able to say to you, hey, this meets all of the protocols that are in our policy and criteria. Now you folks get to decide what you want to do with it. That's the way I'd like to set it up, if that's okay.
Okay. John,
which actually takes care of an issue that I had with number 6 under the procedures, requiring the board to take a vote on the flag at the next scheduled board meeting. My question was, what if we need more information? What if we need more details? I think if it goes through that process ahead of time, I think then that takes care of number 6 and makes it so that we can vote on it and don't have to say, I don't know what would happen under number 6 if we got a proposal that wasn't complete. We'd have to say no because it doesn't meet the criteria, and they'd have to come back or something like that. And I think that may send the wrong message to kids trying to do something.
Okay. I'm looking at the time. We have a few more things on the agenda just to wrap up. David, do you need more information to give us a second draft at the next policy meeting?
No, I've got good marching orders and a good sense of where you all are. So I appreciate the time to pull something together, and I'll get it to you as soon as I can.
Any last comments from the board that are on here before we move on and try and finish up? Okay. Where's my agenda? My agenda disappeared on me. Okay. Is there any other other legal business that anybody has? I see shaking heads. Agenda building for the next one. It sounds like we're going to review a second draft. As part of that, I'm going to remind everybody our next scheduled meeting is October 6th at 5 p.m. And I lost my agenda again. Okay, adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, we got Len, Adrian, and I'm assuming we're going to have several thumbs up by consensus.